It's time to get inside the Giants Huddle.
Let's go, let's go, let's go.
On Giants.com.
I like it, I like it.
And the Giants mobile app.
Boom, give me some juice.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's roll.
Welcome to the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the New York Football Giants. My name is Madelyn Burke, alongside the Super Bowl champ Shaun O'Hara for your Week 10 rapid reaction. The Giants went out to Dallas and fell to the Cowboys. 49-17 was the final score. Of course, though, the big storyline heading into this game and after it, Shaun, was the fact that rookie quarterback Tommy DeVito making his very first NFL start against the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas. For an undrafted rookie, that's a tall task.
Yeah, I'm an undrafted guy, so I remember my very first start in the NFL. It was against the Baltimore Ravens in 2000 in Baltimore. They were the best defense in the league and arguably one of the best defenses to have ever existed, probably second to the 85 Bears. So quite a challenge for Tommy DeVito, and as if that wasn't challenging enough to be on the road, going against Dallas, this great defense with Micah Parsons on one side and DeMarcus Lawrence on the other. His first drive starts on the 3-inch line. The Giants get a defensive stop, a goal line stand, which was phenomenal. It was great penetration, and out trots Tommy DeVito, and he's like, "This is where I got to start. This is where my first start begins." And you know, look, it was tough sledding for him and the entire offense, but I think when you look at the way that he handled the entire part of the game, he was under duress the entire time. He showed a lot of character, a lot of strength, some athletic ability, and he threw for 2 touchdowns. So there's a lot to take away from this, and if you're Tommy DeVito, and say, hey, I did some good things, I can build on some of that.
And not just what he did on the field, but off of it. After the game, going to the podium, addressing the media as a starting quarterback, the way that he handled that with such poise after such a tough loss.
Yeah, and that's not easy. I mean, look, if you look at the stat line, look, he was 5 for 25 for 86 yards, and you would say, oh my goodness, that's awful. And you know what? He didn't have a lot going for him. Offensively, it was a real struggle for him to even have time to hit an open receiver, and if there was one. So it was certainly a challenging time from that standpoint. But I think when you look at the way he handled and approached that first start, the way that he handled the work week, playing quarterback is tough because you've got to play the game on the field and you've got to play the game off the field, which is handling the media, standing up there, taking all the shots, taking all the blame. He didn't deflect. He didn't wince. He didn't blink. And I think that kind of shows the toughness that you would expect from a Jersey kid.
Mm-hmm.
Look, he went to Syracuse, transferred, went to Illinois, so he's battle-tested. And I think he showed some good resilience, not just on the field, but the way that he handled all of the questions and the way he handled this loss and how he's going to spring it forward.
Absolutely. And, we talked a little bit, too. You mentioned that early stop by the Giants defense, right? Dallas was driving down the field. They were really in 5 yards away from the goal. And the defense kind of comes up with a strong stop, stuffs them at the 1-yard line. And you mentioned this is where the Giants offense takes over for the very first time in the game. But defense had a lot of strong moments in this game today. Of course, Cordell Flott had his first career interception late in the first quarter, returned it all the way back to the 12, putting the Giants 12 yards away from a touchdown. They weren't able to convert that. They go forward on 4th and 2. Turn it over on downs, walk away without points there. Some people who are saying, oh, well, they should have just kicked the field goal, taken the points. Some people saying, oh, well, it's good to see that, you put some trust in your players to go for it in that field position. At that point in the game, when you're down 7-0 to the Dallas Cowboys on the road, what goes into that decision?
Yeah, I think that was probably a tough decision to make for Brian Daboll because you do want points. You do want to kind of get some momentum. But I think you also know, look, if we get down here and it's 4th and 2, we're this close to the end zone, we've got to find a way to try to get a touchdown. So I was okay with going for it on 4th and 2. I didn't love the play call. I kind of wish it would have been a little more creative and there would have been some more elements or some other layers so it wasn't just a flat handoff. Dallas has done a good job of getting penetration in the run game in the past. So that's a tough area to run the football in. But I like that on the road. To your point, look, Dallas is going to score a lot of points. Like, you're not going to beat Dallas by kicking field goals. So I think that went into play. I also feel like there might have been a little bit of Brian Daboll saying, I've been here before.
Yeah.
In week 1 at MetLife Stadium, the Giants got stuffed, went for a field goal. It got blocked. It went the other way for a touchdown. It was a disaster. Andrew Thomas got hurt on that play. So I don't know if that played into it. I think it was more that, look, we got to go gas pedal here. We can't just settle for field goals. If we're going to stay in this game and have a chance to win it, we've got to come away with touchdowns.
You're ready for a change. Payday comes early with Citizens, so go to that retreat. New you moves to the country. Now you're raising goats and launching a lifestyle brand. Are you ready for all that life brings?
Yeah, and as a coach, Brian Dable has never been shy in saying, I believe in the players on the field, and want to put them in a position to go for it.
And I think that you feel that as a player. Like, hey, look, our coach is going to give us a chance. Like, we're always out there saying, hey, let's go for it. You know, usually it's the coach that's got to rein you back and say, no, I'm going to take the points. The right move is taking the points. So when your coach believes in you that, hey, on 4th and 2, I'm going to hand the ball off and give you an opportunity to get it, you certainly appreciate it, and you'd like to come through so that he lets you do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And, unfortunately for the Giants, they didn't get points there. They were down 7-0 at the time. Dallas kind of turns around, scores a touchdown, and a couple more. They go into the half up 28-0, and people are thinking, oh no, is this going to be a repeat of what we saw in week 1? Fortunately for the Giants, Tommy DeVito leads this team down the field in the third quarter, gets a touchdown pass to Lawrence Cager, gets them on the board. They were able to get some points on the board in the second half. But it was like Dallas was really airing it out today, too. We saw Dak Prescott throwing for 404 yards and 4 touchdowns, adding another rushing touchdown as well. Dallas was not easing off, and there was no mercy rule by these Cowboys today.
No, it almost kind of felt like the college game a little bit, where you can't just win. You've got to win convincingly. And it almost seemed like they were going for the 50 burger, because even when they pulled Dak out, like CeeDee Lamb was still in there for another series, and Cooper Rush was still airing it out. Like, I kept saying, I can't believe they're still throwing. The game was well in hand, and you would think that they would just kind of run the ball and try to grind the clock out. But I think the other thing too is, like, look, they're trying to get better as a team too, and at that point, it's, hey, let's give Cooper Rush some opportunities, and look, they've got a lot of good weapons. The Giants were banged up coming into the game, and Dory Jackson was out with a concussion, and then Tay Banks goes down, Cordell Flott was down, Thibodeau was down, so
Jalen Hyatt,
they were a little banged up defensively. So I think whenever it's NFL teams kind of running up the score, as people might say, it's look, it's your job to stop them.
Right.
But this Cowboys offense is potent. They've got some stud receivers, as we found out, not just in CeeDee Lamb, but Brandon Cooks is, he's had 1,000-yard receiving seasons almost every single year, and he's been on 5 teams in the last 5 years, I think. So he's definitely a high-caliber receiver, and this offense, when Dak is hot, when he's on fire, they're a tough offense to get off the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the fact that, 404 yards passing for Dak Prescott, that's his 10th career game of 400 or more yards passing. And for context, too, all other Dallas Cowboys quarterbacks combined have only 9 such games.
Yeah,
so
that's impressive.
How impressive he has been for this team, and doing it
and
against
if you don't
the
get
Giants.
pressure on him, like, he's a different quarterback. Like Dak, if you can get to him, if you can rattle him, he will throw the ball away. And he threw 2 picks in this game, and yet the Giants did not have a single sack. So that's certainly something the Giants need to get better at. They need to get more pressure from the front 4. It can't always come from a blitz, because that makes you susceptible to big plays in the passing game when you go man.
Absolutely. And, going into this game, too, I think we talked about this earlier in the week, the fact that the Giants offense really should lean on the run game. You saw Saquon Barkley, 13 carries for 66 yards, averaging 5.1 a carry, which is productive. He had a 21-yard long. Dallas hasn't given up 100 yards rushing to a player all season. But did Saquon running the ball to an extent, but, do you want to see more from Saquon?
I feel like, especially given the situation with Tommy DeVito, and he's making his first start, and knowing how good Dallas is at getting after the quarterback, I definitely would have liked to have seen him get more carries. But the problem is they didn't convert a single third down the entire game. Yeah. So you want to run the football, and you want to stay consistent with the run, but if you're not converting on third down and you're not staying on the field, you're not getting drives, you're not going to get those reps. So I think Saquon, look, he's been playing hard. He's been running really well. When Andrew Thomas was in there, and we saw this last week against the Raiders, the run game was working. Like, they were finding some holes, and there were some lanes. There was a couple of big plays where Saquon, like, he was 1 tackle away from breaking a big one. He's the best player. He can't touch the ball enough, and I think they're trying to continue to find ways to get him the ball. We saw him line up in Wildcat. They flanked Tommy DeVito out as a receiver. I think he wishes he would have kept the ball on one. He handed the ball off, and it ended up not going anywhere. If he'd kept it, he would have had a big run. But Saquon's your best player. If he doesn't touch the ball 25 times, then something's wrong.
You love turf. You're good at it. So you start a turf biz. Business grows, your savings grow. Become the most celebrated name in turf. Are you ready for all that life brings?
Absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned third down. The Giants 0 for 12 on third down on the day. That's just not a
you're not gonna
recipe
win.
for success. And especially when you're on the road, which the Giants will be again next week. Third straight road game, another division opponent heading to Washington to face the Commanders. 1 o'clock game at Washington next week. Commanders coming off a tough one, a barn burner at Seattle. So they'll be taking that cross-country flight back after losing a close game, Shaun. When you're coming off a game like that, when you're facing a team that's coming off a game like that, put it into context what the Commanders must be feeling right now.
Well, I'm sure they're feeling like they had let one slip away. You know, they had Seattle against the ropes, and they had a chance to go for 2 at the end of the game. You know, Sam Howell's been doing a great job throwing the football, and when they give him time, when they protect him, you know, he can light it up. And they've got some good receivers, Scary Terry, Jahan Dotson. You know, they've got some good running backs too, and Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. So I think when you look at their offense, they can move the chains. They can score points. I mean, they put up 29 points at Seattle. That's not a easy place to play. So it's going to be a tall task. I know flying to Seattle and then playing that game, coming back late, you know, it's going to be a little bit of a you know, quick turnaround for them. But I think when you look at Washington, like they're a tough team offensively and defensively. You know, no Montez Sweat, no Chase Young, but they still have Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen inside. So this is still a good defense. They can still get after the quarterback. But for the Giants offense, they've always kind of had, I feel like they've kind of had Washington's number. They beat them earlier this year. Saquon Barkley's always had big games against Washington. We were just talking about how many touches can he get. You know, I think this should be a big game for Saquon Barkley, and hopefully Jalen Hyatt's okay and they can get some big plays out of him this week.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Chase Young and Montez Sweat. Both of them dealt at the trade deadline. That is why they are no longer there in Washington. When these two teams just played each other in Week 7, the Giants came away with a 14-7 win. You mentioned, too, the way that they match up, kind of historically match up well. Is there something to be said? Because, you know, oftentimes the players on the field for each of these matchups can be a bit different. But when they historically tilt in the Giants' favor, you kind of feel that going into it, especially coming off, you know, just a few weeks ago, the Giants got a win at home against Washington. Were able to get a lot of pressure on Sam Howell, a guy who's been sacked a lot this season.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, great, an inspiring performance for the Giants' defense as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good confident builders in this matchup, not just the history with the Washington Commanders, but the fact that we just played them a couple weeks ago, that they're still fresh on the brain. Like the game plan is still fresh offensively, and defensively you kind of know, all right, what to expect. They're not going to change in 3 to 4 weeks. So a lot of that self-scout and the scout of the other team is very consistent. So that should help. Of course, Dexter Lawrence had a monster game against Washington, and I expect it to be the same. Nick Gates, the center for Washington, was a teammate of his, and of course they know each other really well. But the one difference, obviously, with Montez Sweat and Chase Young not being there, Leonard Williams also was not there.
Yep.
He had a big game against them as well. So since they've traded Leonard Williams, this Giants defense has really struggled to stop the run. 125 yards on the ground they gave up to the Raiders, and 164, I believe, to the Cowboys. So that's got to be first and foremost. They've got to stop the run and then get off the field on third down.
Absolutely, and we'll see that one all take place next week. Week 11, Giants-Commanders at Washington, but that's a wrap for this week's Week 10 rapid reaction, of course, reminding you the Giants falling to the Cowboys. 49-17 is the final score. Shaun O'Hara and Madelyn Burke breaking it down. The Giants Huddle is brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the New York Giants. From game day to every day, Citizens is made ready for Giants fans with insights, guidance, and solutions. Learn more at citizensbank.com.